Which NBA logos meet the criteria of an oldie but a goodie? Welcome back to the Green Means Go channel. It's your host, me. Today we are going to be taking a look at all 30 NBA organizations and comparing their current logo to all of their retro logos. A couple of parameters before we get started. I use 1950 as a cutoff date. Some of these organizations have logos that date back farther, but we're going to just go 1950 and beyond. We're also going to be comparing the current logo to any retro logo. Now, some of these organizations have changed 5 and 6 times. So in some cases, it's going to be a 1 versus 6 setup. So obviously the retro team does have an advantage. And because of that, if I deem there are any ties, the tie will go to the current logo. And the last thing before we get started, there are 30 teams that we will be reviewing today. So comment below before you watch what you think the final score will be. Please put the current score first. So if you believe 5 current logos win and 25 retro logos win, you will put 5-25. Here's the tip, and this rating is underway. We will start with the Atlanta Hawks, and you will be able to see my favorite on all of these immediately. It will have the golden square around it. So you can see my favorite is the actual Hawk logo, the bird, palming the brown basketball, not the gray one. This logo has changed quite a lot. They had a little bit of a test with the Seahawks colors, actually, the neon green and blue, but that only lasted 2 years. This team was also known as the St. Louis Hawks back in the 60s, and it was a poorly drawn buff bird. The reason I don't love the current logo is it's just a take on the old logo from the 80s and 90s, but they just put Hawks basketball around it. No creativity, no new iteration, and simply I just like the shot of the full bird, wings spread, palming the basketball. Next up is the Boston Celtics, and as you can see, they have not changed very much at all. In fact, the only thing that's changed since the 1970s has just been filling in some of the blanks in terms of color. So I have given it to the current logo because, as you can see, it has not changed. I don't care for the red they used to have back in the early 70s and late 60s, and I, to be honest, have no idea what that thing is down there. The Charlotte Hornets are an organization that has only been around since the late 80s, early 90s. And of course, you have to go with this retro logo. This is iconic. This is the definition of iconic. I had a coat back in 4th grade that was teal blue and had that big logo on the back. So of course I'm going to pick that. Bro, that coat is going for $460 on Etsy right now. It was the starter one. I remember the zipper being starter. My mom probably just gave it to Goodwill back in 2007, bro. I don't like the new logo at all. I don't think there's anything really Hornet about it besides the little stinger at the bottom and the big wings. I think the old logo does a much better job of showing the full body of the Hornet, and we are not going to talk about the Bobcats. The Chicago Bulls knew what they had in the 60s and have not done anything, okay? So we have given the tie to the current because it is just a tie. I mean, the font stayed the same. Everything has stayed the same down to the lines on the Bulls' face. When you have an iconic, well-recognized logo, I guess you keep it. The Cavaliers have seen some interesting transitions over the last 3 decades. You have the original logo, which I like the font around this, okay, but it looks like the Cavalier is kind of squatting in the woods to maybe relieve himself, so I don't love that. And then they changed in the 80s, and they just went with a basketball and the basketball hoop, which I don't think does anything to reference a Cavalier at all, and they kept that for almost 2 decades, so I find that bizarre. Then they finally transitioned to what I think most people will recognize as a Cavs logo because of what LeBron did for this organization and kind of putting them on the map a little bit more. So I have given my vote for the best Cavaliers logo as to this one just because it brings up memories of LeBron, and I do like the gold elements here over kind of the more muted elements here. What I find interesting about their current logo is it's actually just their old logo with the sword removed. I don't know what the purpose of removing the sword is. I think that actually tells a little bit of the story of the Cavalier, and now it's just a burgundy C in a shield. They went ahead and changed the color of the font. I think this may be one of the worst logos of the Cavaliers. The Mavericks are another organization that has not changed too much, and this one was tough for me. In fact, it was a tie. I could not decide if I liked the retro retro Dallas Mavericks logo or the current one. And, I had arguments both ways. So when it comes down to a tie, like I said, I will give it to the current. I like the colorway. I'm always going to be a sucker for the green and blue colorway. And I like the simplicity of the M with the cowboy hat. However, I do think this new logo obviously brings back memories of Dirk, who I think is one of the best Mavericks of all time, if not the best Maverick of all time. And it actually shows the Maverick, which is a horse, and it has still that basketball element. So we'll give it to the current. After 6 logos, we are tied at 3-3, and we can look at the Detroit Pistons, which have had quite a run of logos, starting with the Fort Wayne Pistons. This mascot down here was quite literally a combinations of car pistons put together to build this little like Tin Man Wizard of Oz looking thing. Then they changed to Detroit and they went very basic. I mean, very basic. And they kept that for a long time until 1995. And then they got a little bit more creative and they added the horse and they added the sort of car elements here with the exhaust pipe and it says Pistons in Detroit. And that's the best logo. I mean, I don't understand why these teams decide to go away with some of these cool creative logo pieces that they have. And so I have given my vote to this old Detroit Pistons logo. And again, I would say this is next, but I like this kind of greenish teal color in here. And that's why I've chosen this one. What I think is interesting is even this logo in the early 2000s and later 2000 teens was better than the current logo. This current logo is just the old logo from the 80s and 90s, except they've like thinned out one of these lines on the basketball and changed the font a little bit. I just think it's lacking creativity. It's lacking any sort of flair. It's lacking originality. So we'll give it to the retro. Denver started as the Rockets in the 70s, and then it changed over to the Nuggets, and it's seen its fair share of logos as well. And this one was a little tough because I think you have the Carmelo days back in here, and that really speaks volumes to this organization, to this logo. But I also think the Rainbow Denver Nuggets is classic and is something that people recognize. So these were 2 top picks for me, but these don't say anything about nuggets. When you think about nuggets, you think about gold, and nothing about mountains and skyline say gold. So I felt like their logo was more about Denver than it was about their mascot Nuggets. Now, the current logo does incorporate the Nuggets with the pickaxes and the basketball, but I don't care for that dark navy and that red and that yellow. I think it's a bad colorway. So what I've done, and this is actually a logo that I didn't even know existed, is I've given it to the Yukon Cornelius logo, and I think they could do something by bringing this back. Update it a little bit, freshen it up, change the colors a little bit, but I like this little gold miner guy looking for golden nuggets. I think this is a great logo. The Warriors logo has a lot of lore, and they've seen a lot of stories over the years, starting in Philadelphia, then going with the San Francisco Warriors, then changing to the Golden State Warriors, still playing in San Francisco. You can see there have been a lot of changes with this piece, and I'm glad they went away from this. I think this is a little elementary, and then we have sort of the headdress of a Native American going onto the Golden State Bridge, which they kept for only 2 years, and then they went to this logo, which has a number 14. So I had to look it up. I will not begin to tell you all of the lore with this, but basically the Warriors had a player named Tom Meschery. He's actually still alive today, and he played for this team for 5 or 6 years. He had mediocre stats, and then he moved to the Supersonics when that organization was birthed. Again, very confusing, but the owner of the Golden State Warriors at the time loved this dude and decided, let's retire his jersey number and put his number in the logo. So they kept it there for 4 or 5 years, and then they kind of, I think, decided, why do we have this guy with average stats in our logo? So they changed it to California basketball, and that was okay for a while. Then they went to an actual Warrior, and I mean, this just screams late 90s, early 2000s, and I don't love it. I think the colors are awful, and I don't, it looks more robot. I hate it. And then it gets to the logo that we have today, which is a little bit of an adaptation from the 2-year logo that they had, which I think is one of the better logos that the Golden State Warriors have had. So I have given the award for this one to the current logo. I don't mind the light blue. In fact, I like the light blue, but we'll call it a tie, and I felt weird giving this a retro, even though the color just changed. So this one's a little bit wonky in terms of scoring, but we're giving it to the current logo. The Rockets started in San Diego with that logo, and then they moved to Houston, where they have been ever since, and their logo has not seen a ton of changes. In fact, I am actually surprised that this isn't their current logo. I had no idea that this was their official logo the last 4 years. I don't think I've ever seen this before, but of course, I have to go with the early 2000s. You're going to see this as a theme if you haven't already. I like the early 2000s, late 90s logos. It's when I grew up watching basketball. It's when I fell in love with the game. So I think this is the best logo. This is too basic. I don't even know what this is. This is not, when I look at this R with the circle, nothing about this says Rocket. So none of these logos say anything about Rocket except for this one and this one. We're not going to count that one, obviously. So we'll give it to the retro. Like the Atlanta Hawks, what the current Pacers logo did is take the old one and just put a circle around it with a name. I don't love that. I do think this one, again, is another classic. I wish you could combine them. I love the hand in this one, and I love the basketball in this one. So I don't know why we don't just combine the hand with the basketball here. This looks like he's palming a tennis ball. I think this logo would be perfect if we could just mess with the lines a little bit. The Clippers had a couple of name and city changes. Once they got to San Diego, they established this logo, and then once they went to Los Angeles, they kept that logo, and they didn't change it until 2015, and they changed it for the worse, I think. I don't know why Clippers is so big and the actual LAC is so small. I think that's a little bit clever, if anything, and I don't know why they don't adopt that and to be a bigger, more focal point of this logo rather than just Clippers. So I got to give it to the Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, Chris Paul era Clippers with this. At least those are the guys I think of when I see this logo. So retro wins again. Like the Bulls, we have another iconic logo that has not changed since the 60s, so we will give it to the current logo, although I do like this lighter purple, but it's not enough to sway me. We'll go current. The Vancouver Grizzlies moved to Memphis in the early 2000s, and they've been there ever since, and they have had no creativity. This one is one of the most offensive ones to me. Why change? Why change from that logo? I mean, you did not have a ton of star power in the first 5 or 6 seasons with this logo. Like, let's nurture this logo. Like, let's let this logo bake a little bit. I mean, this is such a good logo. The colors are so perfect, and then they just went to this basic, awful teddy bear looking grizzly, and then when they said, oh yeah, let's give it a facelift, they just made the shades of blue darker. It's horrible. Bring back the retro logo, Memphis, please. Sitting at 5-9, the Miami Heat did not change all that much over the years. I don't like the orange. I don't think it tells much about the fire. I like the 2 colors here with the red and the yellow. I think this is due for an upgrade. It's been like this since 2000, since Y2K, and I think we could use a facelift. Picking the winner of the Bucks was tough. I love this purple logo, and I think this is good, if not great, but the thing that sold me on this was, if you notice in the antlers up here, there is a bit of a shape of a basketball. Also, the M in the body for Milwaukee is a nice touch. So you have 2 attentions to detail in this logo that you don't get down here. Now, I do love the purple and the green, but because I kind of declared these a tie, I gave it to the current. And yeah, sorry, I don't really mess with Prancer and Vixen down here. I think the Timberwolves have an underrated logo, and I gave it to the Super Retro logo because mainly the colors. This one was also tough for me. I like this one where the font is white over blue. I think the blue is hard to see, and I like the sort of brightness of the trees. Now, when you think about a Timberwolves, timber talks about trees, and so maybe I should have given it to this retro one because there's elements of trees here, and there's not elements of trees here. It's just a wolf here. I don't know. The point is, retro would still beat out the current. I like the colorway of this one a lot, but I still don't love this logo. I don't love the circle logos with so much emphasis on the team name. So we'll give it retro here. Let's talk about the Nets, because I'm actually offended. I'm actually appalled that an organization that has been in the NBA and the ABA for as long as they have has not ever incorporated their mascot in a logo. Nets. like one of the most focal point pieces of a basketball game, the swish, right? You see it, like, what do you see a net anywhere? They had 40, 50, 60 years to give us a logo that actually contained a net, and they have not done it. So you know what I've done? I've not picked, because I'm not going to bow down to mediocre. These are mediocre attempts, all right? And I don't see, like you really put a rim on this logo, but you didn't put a net, which is your whole mascot? Absolutely not. It's staying 7 to 10. I'm not awarding any points to the Nets. The Knicks is a weird one because it's a reference to pants, right? Knickerbockers, and none of these are references to anything besides a basketball and orange and blue. I kind of hate all of these logos. If I had to pick, I like the more simple one here that we had in the 90s, but it's very similar to what we have now. I hate all of these logos. I mean, I especially hate these one with the brown basketballs and this one in the 80s. What were they doing with that horrible, horrible basketball? The Knicks logo, for as iconic as the franchise is pretty poor. Because I already gave a point to the previous Hornet, I feel it's unfair to give it to this Hornet, so I will give best by default the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, I will say there is a special announcement on this page. You know why? Because I decided when I was looking at this that some of these NBA logos are due for an upgrade, like the Pelicans. It's been this way since 2013, and honestly, it's not that great. There are other elements of New Orleans that could be incorporated to make this logo really stand out. So what I am going to do in the future, and this is big, okay? This is big Green Means Go content right here. I'm going to rebrand every NBA logo based on what their city is known for. So I'll give you a sneak peek. I've already done a few. We have the Indiana Racers here and the Cleveland Rockers, and I updated the logos. I changed the logos. I'm going to try to keep the color schemes for all of them, but I'm going to try to give a new logo to each team that actually speaks to the city in some way, and hopefully does a little bit better at incorporating some of these elements. So stay tuned for that video. I'm still working on those logos, but it'll be out soon. I think the Supersonics have another iconic logo, and I'm a little disappointed that the Thunder were established in 2008 and have kept the same logo for all these years, and nothing about it says Thunder, right? Like, this is the point of me recreating these logos. Nothing about this, nothing about Oklahoma City Thunder in this logo says literal thunder, and I think that's ridiculous. So I've given the winning logo to this one, the one from the early 2000s and late 90s. You have, I don't like the colors, all right? I like the more yellow and green, fresh, bright squirt, if you will, color scheme, but I don't like any, this one's okay with the skyline, but, you know, I like the Seattle Space Needle there and the basketball elements, but again, what's a sonic? Like a sonic boom? I don't, a lot of these have potential, but they need reworked. The Orlando Magic, not a team that's been around for too long, just since the late 90s. And this one, I mean, seriously, with the star, that's good font. And they took the creativity, they took the pizzazz away, and they just did standard font, Orlando Magic, and they kept the same logo. I hate the current one. Give us back the one with the stars. I know I've been negative about current logos that resemble this, but I just think this one with the red looks like a pizza box. This looks like the pizza brand, and I don't love the gold in this one, even though when I think about the iconic 76er, Allen Iverson, this is the logo I think about, but I think if this was more white font, blue font, red font, it would have been better than this kind of brownish gold. As you can see, the logo from the late 90s and 80s is the same as today. They just added Philadelphia around it. So this was actually my favorite, but like I said at the beginning of the video, the tie goes to the current, so we have given it to the current logo. But again, I don't love this. For nearly 50 years, the Suns logo has not changed too much. It's kept the same elements. And again, I don't know why we've gone away from the purple. Like, certain teams have certain colors that just speak volumes, that tell history, that tell a story. And what are we doing? We're just stripping it from them. So the Suns going to this black color instead of this purple, I think is ridiculous. I think this basic logo from the 90s was their best logo without all this clutter in the back and the gray sort of background that covers up the letters. I don't know. Just give me the basic stuff. The Blazers might be the funniest logo of any of these, because in the early days we have black on the left, red on the right. Then we switch to red on the left and black on the right. Then we say, no, that's not good enough. Let's go to white on the left and red on the right. And now we have red on the left and white on the right. All they're doing is just spinning this logo in circles, and who knows what we're going to get in the next few years. But no other upgrades are being done. That's what's hilarious about this. It's the same logo from the 80s as it is now. They're just rotating it clockwise every half decade. Stupid logo, but we'll give it to the current. It was through this video that I learned the Sacramento Kings were once the Cincinnati Royals, and they had this terrifying logo down here of a royal. But I do think the elements of the Cincinnati skyline are in the crown, so that's cool. But again, horrifying, absolutely horrifying face on that basketball. Then they had this half basketball with a crown, which they kept until 1995, and they changed to this. But I don't like this logo because nothing about this says king, except maybe you can say that the top, the points here represent a crown, and I don't know if these are like royal scepters or something. Again, iconic logo, but not a logo that I think speaks volumes in terms of what a king is. So I've given it to current because it's adapted the old style logo, but freshened it up. I like the font better. I like the elements of the crown. I think this is a really good logo, so I've given it to current. If you're still watching this video and you disagree with me, you don't disagree with me because nobody disagrees. This is the best Raptors logo in history. And I don't even have to talk about it because nobody's going to sit here and say, well, actually, I like the basketball that has like the claw marks in it. No, you don't. You like the purple one with the dinosaur that reminds you of Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady. Let's move on. The Spurs are another logo that hasn't changed very much at all. They had this spell of about 10, 12 years with these new colors. I don't love those. Obviously, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, this is what you think of, but I don't even love that. So I think it's all kind of a tie. It's all kind of the same, so I've given it to the current. I've given the victory to the current Washington Wizards logo. I like the fact that you have the Washington Monument tied in here with the star, and it's all in a basketball. I think that's a good iconography that describes the city of Washington. This wizard just looks funny. I don't know. It just looks like it's pieced together with like kid tiles that they play with, and it just, you know what I'm talking about? Like, I don't know. It just looks weird. Half basketball moon there, and he's holding the basketball. I appreciate that there's some creativity here, and I know I've been critical of that in the past, but don't love that. You got the Bullets, which used to be their name, and then Gilbert Arenas brought a good. No, that's a different time. Okay, moving on. 13 to 15 with one more logo to go, and this is much like the Raptors. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with me. I think the current logo, and I didn't even know this was the current logo. I thought this was the current logo. This is horrible. I mean, this is awful. I could have made this in Canva in 4 minutes and in 26 seconds. This is a pathetic logo. This is the logo that wins, or maybe this one. And even this one's better with the purple. But purple, why are they taking the good colors out? Why are they taking the purples out? I don't understand that. Even this one is fine. Give us the Jazz with the... Gosh, what is this? Final score, we have current 13, retro 16, and I know I told you guys to do 30, but with the Nets not having an actual net in their logo ever, I decided to throw that out, so we did only have 29. You can see my favorites down here, and I think you can also tell that I have a type. I like animals, and I like purple, and I like teal. All of these three favorites that I have are purple, animal, and teal elements, but these are the best logos. I mean, look at them. Are you like, who's going to argue with me that these are not three of the top logos in NBA history? Please tell me that you don't like any of these. You can't. Thank you guys for coming by. I know it was a bit of a longer video today, but I wanted to go through all these logos, talk about them, give you a chance to see how these organizations have changed and adapted or not adapted as the years have gone by. Remember, if you're not subscribed, hit that button so that you can come back and see me rebrand all of these NBA logos. That'll be out in the next few weeks. I'll try to do it sooner rather than later. Thanks for coming by. We'll see you next time.